A simple elderly woman denied service at a spa, unaware her rich son owns the franchise. Martha Wilson smoothed down her well-worn floral dress as she waited at the bus stop. At 76, her once nimble fingers were now gnarled with arthritis, but she maintained a quiet dignity despite her modest means. The crisp autumn air of Boston sent a shiver through her thin frame as she clutched her purse, inside which was a gift certificate to Luminous Day Spa, a birthday present from her neighbor Doris. "You deserve some pampering, Martha," Doris had insisted. "Ever since Frank passed, you've been taking care of everyone but yourself." The bus wheezed to a stop, and Martha carefully climbed aboard, her knees protesting with each step. She'd never been to a fancy spa before. Such luxuries weren't part of her working-class life, first as a waitress and later as a hospital cafeteria worker. But Doris had been insistent, and Martha had finally relented. 40 minutes later, Martha found herself standing before an imposing glass building in the upscale Back Bay neighborhood. The gleaming facade of Luminous Day Spa towered above her, its sleek architecture a stark contrast to her humble appearance. She hesitated at the entrance, suddenly feeling out of place. Inside, the reception area gleamed with marble floors and minimalist furniture. The air was perfumed with lavender and eucalyptus. Behind the desk, a young woman with immaculate makeup and a sleek ponytail glanced up briefly, her eyes quickly returning to her computer screen. "Excuse me," Martha said softly, approaching the counter. "I have a gift certificate for a treatment today." The receptionist, her nameplate read Alexis, looked up with barely concealed impatience. "Do you have an appointment?" Martha fumbled in her purse. "I'm not sure. My friend Doris arranged everything." She produced the gift certificate, slightly crumpled. "Here it is." Alexis took the certificate between two manicured fingernails, as if it might be contaminated. Her eyes narrowed as she examined it. "This appears to be valid, but we require appointments. We're fully booked today." Martha glanced around the empty waiting area. "Oh, I see. Could I make an appointment for another day then?" Alexis sighed dramatically. "Let me check." She tapped at her keyboard with obvious reluctance. "We have very limited availability. Our clientele tends to book weeks in advance." Martha nodded, her enthusiasm dimming. "I understand. Whatever you have available would be fine." Alexis's eyes flicked over Martha's modest dress and worn handbag. "Actually, I've just remembered. We're going through a system update. I can't book anything right now." She slid the certificate back across the counter. "Perhaps you'd be more comfortable at Simple Serenity downtown. It's more accessible." The meaning was clear. Martha wasn't the right kind of customer for this establishment. 3 miles away, in a gleaming corner office overlooking Boston Harbor, Michael Wilson was in the middle of a video conference with investors. At 48, Michael had built Lumina Health, a wellness empire that included luxury spas, fitness centers, and organic product lines. The son of a cafeteria worker and a mechanic, he'd clawed his way up from community college to Harvard Business School, and then through the ranks of corporate America before launching his own venture. "Our fourth-quarter projections exceed expectation," Michael said confidently, his custom-tailored suit a testament to his success. The new Luminous Day Spa locations are outperforming even our most optimistic models." The investors nodded appreciatively on screen as Michael presented growth charts and revenue forecasts. What none of them knew was that behind his professional facade, Michael carried a weight of regret that no amount of financial success could lighten. When the call ended, his assistant Linda poked her head in. "Your wife called. She wanted to remind you about dinner with the Goldmans tonight at 8. Michael nodded absently, his thoughts already drifting to the stack of reports on his desk. "Thanks, Linda. Could you bring me the customer satisfaction surveys from the new Boston location? I want to review them before tomorrow's management meeting." Linda hesitated. "Actually, there's something else. Quality control flagged an incident at the Boston Spa this morning. Nothing major, but they thought you should know since you're so particular about customer experience." Michael's expression darkened. "What happened?" A woman with a gift certificate was turned away. The receptionist claimed they were fully booked, and suggested she go to a more accessible establishment. Was the certificate valid? Yes, completely. And according to the security footage, the reception area was empty. The supervisor is already handling it. Alexis has been written up twice before for similar behavior. Michael pinched the bridge of his nose. Get me the details. Full report. Security footage. Everything. This isn't what we stand for. I want to make this right personally. Linda nodded, but before she could leave, Michael's cell phone rang. The screen displayed Doris Miller, his mother's neighbor, and the only person who kept him updated on Martha since their falling out 10 years ago. Doris, is everything okay? Is my mother all right? The voice on the other end was indignant. Your mother is fine physically, but her feelings are hurt something terrible. Do you know what happened to her today at that fancy spa? Michael's stomach dropped. The woman at the Boston spa? That was my mother. Yes, I gave her that gift certificate for her birthday. She was so excited. Michael, she put on her best dress and took the bus all the way across town. And then some snippy girl made her feel like she didn't belong there. Michael closed his eyes, the irony hitting him like a physical blow. His own mother turned away from his own establishment, a business built partly to prove himself to a family that had once considered him a failure. Martha sat at her small kitchen table, a cup of tea cooling before her. The apartment was modest but meticulously clean, with faded photographs adorning the walls, snapshots of a life well lived despite its hardships. The largest was her wedding photo with Frank, followed by pictures of their only son, Michael, from his childhood through his college graduation. There were no recent photos of Michael. Their relationship had fractured a decade ago over what now seemed like trivial disagreements. His choice to leave his stable engineering job for a risky business venture, his marriage to Catherine, a woman Martha thought was too polished and cold for her son, and finally, the argument where words were said that couldn't be unsaid. You're ashamed of where you come from, she had accused him during their last real conversation. Be ashamed of your simple mother with her simple life. And you've never understood ambition, he'd retorted. Never supported my dreams if they took me beyond the limitations you set. The doorbell's ring startled Martha from her reverie. Through the peephole, she saw Doris's familiar face and opened the door. How was it? Doris asked eagerly, bustling in with a small paper bag that Martha knew contained homemade cookies. Was it as luxurious as the website claimed? Did they treat you like a queen? Martha's smile faltered. It wasn't quite what I expected. Doris's excitement dimmed as Martha recounted her experience. They wouldn't serve you, but I paid good money for that certificate. My niece works for the corporate office. That's how I got it at a discount. It's fine, Doris. Really, those places aren't for people like me. Doris's face flushed with indignation. That's absolute nonsense. Your money is as good as anyone else's. She pulled out her phone. I'm calling my niece right now. This is discrimination, pure and simple. Please don't make a fuss, Martha protested weakly. But Doris was already dialing. Rebecca? It's Aunt Doris. You won't believe what happened to my friend with that gift certificate I bought. Doris paced the small kitchen as she relayed the story, her voice rising with each detail. Martha sighed, turning to prepare another cup of tea. She didn't want special treatment or to cause trouble for anyone. The incident had been humiliating enough without drawing more attention to it. What? Doris's exclamation made Martha turn. Are you absolutely certain? Doris was staring at Martha with wide eyes. Well, I'll be damned. She ended the call and sank into a kitchen chair. What is it? Martha asked, alarmed by her friend's expression. Rebecca just told me something unbelievable. Doris leaned forward. Luminous Day Spa is owned by Lumina Health, and Lumina Health was founded by a man named Michael Wilson. She paused for effect. Martha, your son owns the spa that turned you away. Martha's teacup clattered against its saucer. That's impossible. Michael works for an engineering firm. He designs bridges. That was 10 years ago. Martha, Rebecca says he's some big-shot CEO now. made a fortune in the wellness industry. Martha's mind reeled. Could it be true? Her Michael? The boy who'd built model airplanes at this very table? Now the owner of that cold, gleaming place that had made her feel so small? She hadn't kept track of his career. The silence between them had been too painful to breach, even out of curiosity. Even if it's true, Martha said finally, it changes nothing. He made his choice years ago. I made mine. But as the evening shadows lengthened across her apartment, Martha found herself taking out the dusty photo album from the bottom drawer of her dresser, tracing the image of her son's smiling face at his college graduation, the last truly happy day they had shared. Michael's driver navigated through the familiar working-class neighborhood where he'd grown up, each street corner holding memories that success had failed to erase. As they approached his mother's apartment building, Michael felt a tightening in his chest. 10 years since he'd been here. 10 years of achievements he couldn't share with the woman who had raised him alone after his father's death. The building looked smaller than he remembered, its brick facade weathered by Boston winter. Michael instructed his driver to wait and made his way up the familiar stairs, his designer shoes incongruous against the worn steps. He hesitated before apartment 3B, hand raised to knock. What would he say? How could he explain that the very empire he'd built, partly to prove his worth, had humiliated his mother? The irony was almost too much to bear. Before he could knock, the door across the hall opened and Doris Miller emerged. Well, look who's finally shown up, she said, arms folded across her chest. 10 years too late, but here nonetheless. Michael winced at her tone, but couldn't argue with the truth of her words. Hello, Doris? Is she home? She is, and she knows. About the spa, about everything. Your fancy company, your success, that you own the place, that treated her like she wasn't good enough to walk through the door. Doris's eyes softened slightly. She cried, Michael. I haven't seen her cry since your father's funeral. Michael's composure threatened to crack. I need to talk to her. Yes, you do, but tread carefully. That woman gave everything for you, everything. With that, Doris retreated into her apartment, leaving Michael alone in the hallway. He knocked gently. After a moment that felt like eternity, the door opened. Martha stood before him, smaller than he remembered, her hair now completely silver. Her eyes, so like his own, widened in surprise. Michael. Mom. The word felt foreign on his tongue after so long. May I come in? She stepped aside wordlessly, and Michael entered the apartment where he'd spent his childhood. It was exactly as he remembered. The same faded sofa, the same ceramic figurines his mother collected, the same smell of lemon furniture polish. You look well, she said finally, her voice carefully neutral. Successful. I am. Michael struggled to find the right words. Mom, about what happened at the spa. You don't need to explain. Martha's chin lifted slightly. Doris told me you own that place now. I didn't know you'd done so well for yourself. That's not the point. What happened to you there? It's inexcusable. That's not the company I built. It's not what I stand for, isn't it? Martha's question was soft, but hit with the force of an accusation. Oh, that young woman took one look at me and decided I didn't belong in your beautiful building with your beautiful people. Maybe she understands your vision better than you think. Michael flinched. That's not fair, isn't it? Martha repeated. You walked away from your roots, Michael. Walked away from me. Built a life that had no place for your simple mother with her simple ways. The truth of her words stung worse than any business setback he'd ever faced. Hey, I'm sorry, he said finally. Not just about the spa, about everything. The things I said 10 years ago, the silence since then. I was wrong. Martha's expression remained guarded. Sorry doesn't erase a decade, Michael. I know. He took a tentative step forward, but maybe it's a place to start. The following Saturday, Martha found herself once again standing before the gleaming facade of Luminous Day Spa. This time, however, she wasn't alone. Michael stood beside her, his hand lightly touching her elbow. You don't have to do this, she said, hesitating at the entrance. I don't need special treatment because I'm the owner's mother. "This isn't special treatment," Michael replied firmly. "This is making things right. Every client deserves the respect that you were denied." Inside, the spa was bustling with weekend clients. Michael guided his mother past the reception, where a new receptionist now sat, and into a private office where a young woman waited. "Mrs. Wilson, I'm Rebecca Jones, Customer Experience Director," she said, extending her hand. "I can't express enough how deeply sorry we are for your experience last week." Martha felt out of place in this sleek environment, but shook the offered hand. "It's really not necessary." "It absolutely is," Rebecca interrupted gently. "What happened to you represents a fundamental violation of our core values." She glanced at Michael. "Mr. Wilson has been very clear about the standards we uphold." Michael stepped forward. "I'd like to show you something, Mom." He led her through a door into what appeared to be a staff training room. On the wall hung a framed document titled Lumina Health Core Principles. Martha adjusted her reading glasses and read aloud. "We honor every individual's dignity, regardless of appearance, background, or circumstance." "Do you know who wrote that?" Michael asked quietly. Martha shook her head. "You did." At her confused look, he continued, "Not directly, but those were your words. Something you told me when I was 8 and refused to play with the new kid because his clothes were secondhand." Martha's throat tightened with emotion as the memory surfaced. "I remember. Those values, your values, are the foundation of everything I've built." Michael's voice grew hoarse. "That's why what happened to you cuts so deep. I failed to ensure that my mother's wisdom permeated every level of this company." Martha studied her son's face, seeing beyond the successful businessman to the boy she'd raised. "You've come a long way from our kitchen table, Michael." "Not as far as you might think," he hesitated. "I've made changes this week. New training protocols, revised hiring practices. But there's something else I want to show you." He led her to another area of the building, away from the treatment rooms. As they turned a corner, Martha stopped in surprise. Before her was a simple yet elegant space, unlike the ultra-modern aesthetic of the rest of the spa. Warm woods replaced cold marble, and comfortable chairs invited relaxation. "This is our new community wellness space," Michael explained, "open to everyone, regardless of ability to pay. Weekly free services for seniors, veterans, and anyone needing a moment of peace they might not otherwise be able to afford." Martha walked slowly around the room, touching the natural materials, noting the accessibility features thoughtfully incorporated into the design. "We're opening these in all our locations," Michael continued, "starting with the neighborhoods that need them most." He paused. "I'd like to name this program after you, if you'll allow it." Martha turned to her son, tears threatening to spill. "Why would you do that?" "Because you taught me what truly matters. I just forgot for a while." Michael swallowed hard. "I built all this trying to prove something, but in the process, I lost track of who I was building it for." 3 months later, Martha sat on a bench in the small garden behind the spa, watching clients come and go through the community wellness entrance. The winter chill had given way to early spring warmth, and tiny buds were appearing on the branches overhead. The door opened, and Catherine, Michael's wife, emerged with 2 cups of tea. She handed one to Martha and sat beside her. "The seniors' arthritis class is fully booked again," Catherine said. "That instructor you recommended is a miracle worker." Martha smiled, sipping her tea. "Ginger has been teaching movement therapy for 30 years. She knows her stuff." In the months since the reconciliation with her son, Martha had found herself unexpectedly immersed in Michael's world, not as an outsider, but as a valued advisor. The Martha Wilson Community Wellness Initiative was expanding to 5 more locations, with Martha consulting on services that would genuinely serve diverse community needs. More surprising was her evolving relationship with Catherine. The daughter-in-law she had once dismissed as cold and status-conscious had revealed depths Martha hadn't anticipated. Catherine's background, raised by a single mother who worked multiple jobs, wasn't so different from Martha's own. Her polished exterior had been armor, not artifice. "Michael's running late," Catherine said, checking her watch. "Board meeting." "That boy always did lose track of time when he was focused on something," Martha replied with maternal indulgence. Catherine laughed. "Some things never change." The spa door opened again, and Alexis, the former receptionist, emerged. After the incident, she had been given a choice: termination or a complete reinvention of her role. Surprisingly, she had chosen the latter. Now, under Martha's mentorship, she was working with the community program, learning what service truly meant. "Mrs. Wilson," Alexis called, approaching the bench. "The Veterans Hour group is asking if you'll join their discussion today. They said your perspective on resilience was helpful last week." Martha nodded. "Tell them I'll be there in a few minutes." As Alexis walked away, Catherine squeezed Martha's hand. "You've made such a difference here." "Not just here," Martha replied, thinking of the Sunday dinners now regularly held in her small apartment, with Michael and Catherine squeezed around her kitchen table, of the photographs of her grandchildren, twins she hadn't known until 3 months ago, now displayed proudly on her walls, of the bridges rebuilt, stronger than before. The garden gate opened, and Michael hurried in, apologizing for his lateness. Martha watched her son, successful yet humbled, powerful yet newly aware of that power's responsibilities, and felt a completeness she had thought forever lost. "We're discussing the Chicago expansion," Michael said, kissing his mother's cheek in greeting. "I need your insight on which neighborhood would benefit most." Martha stood, placing her teacup on the bench. "Let me finish with the veterans first. Then we'll talk Chicago." As Martha walked beside her son toward the building that had once denied her entry, now transformed by remembered values and renewed connections, she reflected on the unexpected journey that had brought her here. Not as a simple elderly woman denied service, nor as merely the owner's mother granted special privilege, but as herself, Martha Wilson, a woman whose wisdom, hard-won through a lifetime of challenges, had finally found its widest expression. She had come full circle, her simple truths now touching lives far beyond what she could have imagined. And in that circle's completion, both mother and son had found their way home.